Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our council meeting of the 17th of April 2023. Just to remind you that an audio recording of the meeting will be made for minute-taking purposes and will last the length of the open meeting. The audio file will be available on the council website. I'd like to welcome our elected members. We have an apology from Councillor Miller. I'd also like to welcome our Chief Executive, Nigel Morris, General Manager of Infrastructure, Andy Baker, Acting General Manager of Community, Tash Hunt, Acting General Manager of Corporate, Trish Kirkland, and Tanya Cregan, Executive Assistant to the Mayor, and Council members, and our Minute Secretary and the other staff who are also with us. I'd like to welcome the members of the gallery, and Brian from the Victor Harbour Times and the Fleurieu Sun, and Georgina from the Southern Argus. It's nice to see you here. The Alexandrina Council and its communities acknowledge the Narrandjeri people as the traditional custodians of the lands and waters of our council district. I ask you all to please stand for the local government prayer. Almighty God, we humbly beseech Thee to grant Thy blessing upon the works of this council. Guide us in our deliberations for the advancement and the true welfare of the people of this district. Thank you. Remind elected members of your obligations under declarations of conflicts of interest, and you should disclose them as the item comes up before we go into it, and the reasons for explain it all. First item is the minutes of our council meetings held on the 20th of March 2023 and the 3rd of April 2023. There's a recommendation that those minutes be received. Moved Councillor Maidment. Seconder, Oliver. Any discussion relating to those minutes? Any problems with them? No? Everybody happy? All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. Borrow's playing it. So item 2 is adjourned debate. There is no adjourned debate. Item 3 is presentations and deputations. We have 2. 3.1 is a deputation from Bronwyn Lewis and Carlos Quaremba regarding affordable and social housing. They have requested 10 minutes instead of 5, so with the leave of the chamber, all those in favour of that? In favour? That's just there, okay? It's got to be 2/3. So, yep, we'll give you 10 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor Parkes, for considering our request. We requested it because there's 2 of us speaking and we have quite a bit of information to get through. So the first slide is just a summary of how we got here. So in the previous 2 terms, we had a motion around affordable housing which was superseded by the Planning and Development Act in 2016. The rest of the thing you can read for yourself. We had a homeless forum by Fleurieu Foundation, and the Fleurieu Affordable Housing Committee was formed on the 26th of August post that forum, and that week we visited David Basham to talk about affordable housing. Early in 2021, Rebecca Sharkey attended our meeting and explained the federal focus on affordable housing. In 2021, the Fleurieu Foundation Homelessness Committee was formed, so we have 2 different foci. They concentrate on homelessness, we're concentrating on affordable housing. Also in 2021, Malang and District Community Association were to investigate becoming a housing provider. This actually wasted a lot of our time because they decided not to, and we could have been working with other housing providers. So we sort of stalemated around the caretaker period. However, in 2022, there was a land review that identified land in Malang and 2 motions that the previous chamber passed. Those of you that were here will remember them. So, in context to the second motion, we are looking at criteria for 15% affordable housing and how that is managed, and council land that could be developed for affordable housing. This is not just an Alexandrina problem. The NGA discussion paper, which the NGA, for those new people, is the National Conference of Local Government. Last year there was a discussion paper, there's a federal agenda and local delivery. The House of Representatives are doing a standing committee inquiry into how to motivate developers around taxation and those sort of issues. The other thing around the national, the national housing supply, is that the former ALGA president, David O'Loughlin, and was the former mayor of Prospect, was recently appointed to the federal government new Housing Supply and Affordability Council. This is really great for local government in South Australia because we are at odds with other states, like, for example, Victoria, that have been able to negotiate a lot more federal funding than South Australia has. So the key points on the ALGA article, you can see the article. I will be sending you a link to a whole lot of the things that I talk about later if you want to look at it. The main message is for councils to be alert to this issue and own it. Last year, the LGA state election platform said that we have a role in bringing stakeholders together. We need to commit to working in partnership, and Regional Development Australia has reported a statewide regional investment pipeline of $36.35 billion projected over 5 years if workers can be housed. Councils all over Australia are working on this issue now, and I'm disappointed Councillor Miller's not here because she asked about other councils. So there's a good example there of Maroubra Council where they were looking at their bigger properties with single women in them, and they've built, purpose-built. And this is the same in Strathalbyn, the same problem. So the SARAC policy toolkit accepted by you last month as a framework for the report coming back to you, there is an absence of 1 to 2 bedroom dwellings. We also know that regional dwelling prices have increased by 13.2%, and there is a 26.3% reduction in available rental properties relative to 2 years prior. So in some of our towns, and I can say this wholeheartedly for Port Elliot and Middleton and Victor Harbour, there are no rental properties. You have people queuing up for miles on open inspections. So the SAROC policy toolkit is around establishing how South Australian councils can make the best of the National Housing Infrastructure Facility, a $1 billion facility. That's already happening both here and interstate, and we want the Fleurieu to be part of that. So if you look at other councils, and this was in your handout last month, Tatiana District Council, which is at Keith and on the border there, to answer Councillor Oliver's question, they've established a temporary housing register for people in conditions of domestic violence, and they've also got a deferred payment policy. They're looking at a deferred payment policy for development infrastructure, but they've built in caravan parks and recreational areas, and they are housing with Unity Housing, which is a community. They're partnering with Unity Housing to build 2 times 4 bedroom affordable properties for families, but they're also looking at the smaller units. Sorry, I'm rushing so that we get through it all in time. Alexandrina data, as per the last council briefing, which I attended, we have a large proportion in the lowest quartile of household income. So we've got 30%. The people on lower incomes who are in housing distress are 91.5%. These are pretty staggering figures. So in the 2021 census data, 71.8% of Alexandrina households are 1 or 2 people, but only less than 20% are 2-bedroom dwellings. It doesn't work. We've got a real mismatch. So I'll hand over to Councillor Quaremba, who is part of our group, and I thank him very much for giving up his time to join us tonight.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, elected members. Post-COVID immigration effect. Net overseas immigration has recovered post-COVID with a gain of almost 19,600 persons. This is significant change from the loss of 2,060 people the previous year. Of the 6 regions that make up regional South Australia, 4 experienced population growth, including during this period. The region that experienced the greatest growth was the Fleurieu, Kangaroo Island, Victor Harbour, Goolwa, Strath. The township of Strath and Goolwa recorded the greatest increase in population at 1,948 people due to the proximity to Adelaide. South Australia's share of national net immigration intake has traditionally averaged between 4 to 5% annually over the past 4 decades. An article in The Australian on the 3rd of April is forecasting that this year we'll be receiving a net influx of 350,000 people, a total of 650,000 coming during the worst rental crisis in generations. The opportunity and cost. June 21, the RDSA publication Growth Our Regional Workforce has revealed a statewide regional investment pipeline of $31.2 billion projected over 5 years, with estimates that the delivery of almost 20% of the pipeline would create 24,960 regional construction jobs over this period. In addition, however, the document highlights that 1,941 job vacancies were estimated in regional South Australia in March 2021, and a figure which has grown to 73% over the previous 12 months. The evidence risk is that regional housing shortages are not alleviated. This significant investment pipeline may not eventuate, with adverse consequences for regional economies, including reduced economic diversity, reduced regional employment, reduced revenues for all 3 levels of government, and by implication, a reduction in regional vibrancy and community wellbeing. I'll pass back to you. Thanks.
Thanks, Carlos. Council's role. This was covered in your briefing, but I just highlighted that we need more smaller houses for 1 to 2 people. We need to sell or donate surplus land for social housing. And recently, the Craven Group, which was in your briefing papers, agreed to the provision of up to 20% affordable housing in Goolwa, North and Strathalbyn. The problem with that is there's no criteria attached to it. So we want to drill down on that. Right now, there is a South Australian parliamentary inquiry. The City of Victor Harbour is writing a response. The Fleurieu Affordable Housing Committee is writing a response, and we want to know if Alexandrina Council is putting in a formal response. We want you to be part of the solution. What can be done now? We had a strategic land review promised in 2019. We have land, let's use it. We need to actually engage with people to come together with joint ventures for community housing organisations and developers to achieve the housing outcomes. We need to get Malang shovel ready, and we need a housing provider partnership for that. We need to develop policy and procedure for developments in Goolwa, Strathalbyn and Middleton, a range of residential zones to facilitate diverse housing stock and define what this looks like in Alexandrina. And we need to work with Victor Harbour and their team, who are working with Flinders University, covering local government here in South Australia. We don't need to act in isolation. We need to collaborate. And I'd like to thank, perfect timing. I'd like to thank Matt Atkinson and Penny Warland for their work with us. And Matt has been to several of our meetings, and Penny has provided a lot of information for both you and us. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Oliver.
Thanks for your presentation. I just want to understand a little bit more about the context of affordable housing in Malang. Are you saying that there's land in Malang that's owned by the council that is social housing approved, that we could facilitate something with?
Thank you. I actually brought some information on it. There is some land that is Crown land, and it is in the care and control of council. The native title has been extinguished. It is not community land under the Local Government Act. However, it may be considered by the local community to be a reservable parklands, but SA Housing has an interest as some of their properties are located on a portion of the lot. Council's property officer advises that if SA Housing Authority were prepared to develop on this land, the best solution would be the dedication to council to be revoked and a new dedication of the authority issued under Crown lands. Community land is much harder to develop, so if you're thinking about purchasing land to become community land, it's much harder under this state government to develop for affordable housing. The fact that it is not community land does simplify things, and I've got a copy of the title and those things. We had meetings with, as you know, I presented earlier this year on 3D printing, and the 3D printer did some mock-ups of two-bedroom units that could go on this land. We've been talking to, we've as a group, we have been talking to both the state and the federal government. Rebecca Sharkey was very keen that this land be for older women, and that's a criteria of the federal government. The state government, my conversations with them sort of got a bit hiccuped when Malang Community Centre went off to our friends at the Argus and said how long everything was taking when we were actually doing the work behind the scenes. So that kind of hiccuped a bit, but they're back on track now. And we're really looking at a partnership with Alexandrina Council, state government and a housing provider. And at this stage, we'd probably go back to Junction, who do a lot of the placements in the area. We were hoping for it to be the Malang District Community Association.
Any further questions? Councillor Coomans.
Yeah, thanks Bronwyn and Carlos for your presentation. You mentioned housing providers. Are there quite a few in this space, and have you been able to talk to them about this the project?
In Alexandrina there are a few, but Junction is the one that Alexandrina Council chose in the term before ours last term to work with, and they have been part of the Affordable Housing Committee from the get-go. The problem is Fleurieu Foundation fund a early intervention officer for homelessness with Junction. This is where we separated on the focuses, because the Fleurieu Foundation has money and wanted to focus on homelessness. We actually wanted to look at affordable housing and stock, because we know that even though there is intervention is fabulous, we are about to hit a tsunami of homelessness. And I'll give you an example of a woman in Strathalbyn who came to me only a few weeks ago and said she's a single mum, she works part-time, she can't take on any more hours because her son is 8 years old, and how can she take on more hours to cope with her increase in her mortgage? And she's absolutely terrified of the rate increase because she won't be able to afford to stay in Strathalbyn, and their whole family network is in Strathalbyn. If the rates are beyond her means, she actually will sell up and leave the district. And I feel really, we know that, well, those of you that know me from previous meetings, in Port Elliot I had people actually reverse mortgaging to pay the rates last year. So we know that those people will sell and then they'll have to go somewhere. That's the problem. They might sell their homes, but where are they going to live? There's no rental properties. So it's just compounding. Do you want to say something to that too?
Yeah, I'll just quickly add.
We just sort of stick to the question, because
Okay.
we're getting into a further presentation instead of answering the question.
Sorry. Yeah.
So we've now gone nearly 17, 18 minutes.
Sure.
Can Carlos just answer that Quaremba?
Yep.
So I spoke to Junction last week, and when I asked them as a builder, not as a councillor or anybody else, but just as a builder, I said, if I was to build houses for you tomorrow, how many houses would you need? 50, 60, 70? They said, keep going. We're talking in the hundreds. And this is coming. This tsunami of people is coming. We just haven't seen it yet. But you look at the major cities, Queensland, Brisbane, there's tent cities. So I'm just wondering how long are we going to keep kicking the can down the road? Are we going to wait till these tent cities start arriving? So we're really, us as councillors are in a really fortunate position that we can actually really make a difference pretty quickly. We've just got to get on with it. We can't just keep ticking the box. So that's all we're asking for, is just to people to say, let's do something. Thank you.
Are there any further questions? Councillor Coomans?
Sorry for thank you for your patience, Mayor Parkes. I'm just wondering, in terms of what the call is for. Is it for 1 or 2 bedroom homes? Is it for 3, 4? What size homes? And is Junction involved in that or not?
As far as I know, literally any house will do at the moment, and they're not worried so much about whether the house is, got solar panels or, when you're poor and you don't have a house, you just want a roof over your head. And I can speak from experience. I have lived on the streets, and it's not fun. And when you do have a roof over your head, it makes a big difference for you. So it may be hard for some people in the chamber to grasp that concept, but it is out there, and it's hitting a lot of people now. And like I said, when I was up in Canberra, I spoke to 6 senators, and the thirst is there from state government to do something. They're looking to park the money somewhere. So I think if councils can be shovel ready, this is where the money's going to go. So I think it's important that we actually try and do something as quickly as possible. Thank you.
I'll just quickly add one thing about a Strathalbyn example. Junction have a large house in Strathalbyn that only has one resident. They can't take her out of that house because there's nowhere for her to go, no 1 or 2 bedroom units. But that's tying up a home for a family that they've got. So we just have to have more supply.
Are there any further questions? No, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your
Both of you. So 3.2 is a deputation from Natasha Davis, who's the Chief Executive Officer of Trees for Life. And Natasha's going to speak to us about the Trees for Life program, or Bush for Life program. Thanks.
Mayor, I was also going to ask for an extension, perhaps 2 minutes extra.
Couple of minutes. We're happy to give Natasha a few minutes extra.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks very much for welcoming me here tonight. I was hoping to be here with the Bush for Life officer for this region, but he has a nasty cold, so he hasn't come to share that with you. So I really appreciated that talk, because I've worked in both social and environmental policy over my time, and it's occurred to me more and more that we have some shocking social problems in our country, but we also have some quite shocking environmental problems, and we actually have a housing crisis for nature as well. So I'm just putting that forward as a framing, because the Biodiversity Conference globally last year has acknowledged we have a climate crisis or climate emergency. We also have a biodiversity emergency. So every bit we're doing to protect the bits of nature we have left is playing our role in helping us not fall off the cliff when it comes to an extinction crisis. Now let's see if my little dinger works. There we are. So Trees for Life, you've probably all heard of Trees for Life before or been involved in some way. We've been around for over 40 years. We're very much about restoring nature, obviously, but also getting people involved in that cause. And we've had a very strong history. Strathalbyn's still actually our #1 membership base, but a lot of participation in the Fleurieu. Bush for Life is a program that has also been running for nearly 30 years. This is what the team came up with in terms of their sort of statement around Bush for Life, but very much practical action, doing things on the ground to help protect our bush, but getting people involved and becoming the custodians of these special patches of land. That's Corey, who's not here today. These are all the sites that we have, so you can see they're very heavily centred around the Mount Lofty Ranges, where we've got some out in the Yorke Peninsula and a few further afield, but we've typically had a focus in this area. That's the map of sites in Alexandrina. Sorry, it's not a big, beautiful dots, but you can see we've got a good spread across your council. And how do you get involved in Bush for Life? Well, there are 2 options. You can become a site carer. So you adopt a site and we train people up. You have to do our bush care training to do that. To be part of a site carer, we provide all the WHS gear, access to a coordinator, regular visits and things. We also have bush action teams. So if you don't want that commitment to be tied to a site, you can come along on one of our teams and go to all the different sites across South Australia. And we had We are getting a good number of people coming through still. So although we've got older people retiring, and typically people have been doing bush care at retirement age, but we get younger people involved too, and the retirement age is going up, as we know too, so we have to keep attracting younger people. So we did have 65 new people come and try the bush care program last year, which is fantastic. And for those teams, we provide all the transport and make it as easy as possible for people to participate. So in your council, and of course the first question is, how can you have 17.5 Bush for Life sites? One is shared with Mount Barker Council, that's why it's half a site. So we've got 40 site carers. Over the last year, just a few stats and figures, there were 39 supervised activities, so there's a lot of work going on through your council area. And also we had 8 of those special bush action team days, where whole days where we bring volunteers from other parts, typically starting in Adelaide and coming down here for the day, and they love it. I looked at your list of volunteers actually, and there's some very familiar names who I've met on some of our other trips. They're very committed, amazing people. You have here, down here. Often they become more knowledgeable than our staff about the plants. They're so committed. These are all pictures from council too, some beautiful native plants. So the outcomes are there in terms of obviously getting the native species to flourish by removing the threats. We typically don't plant into bush care sites, although we've been doing a little bit in the Green Adelaide region with some threatened flora to put back some daisies that have disappeared from that region. The volunteers become very committed to the site, so they often will report things happening that shouldn't be happening, rubbish dumping or bike trails or other things too. So they become like the eyes and ears as well. And there are great social outcomes. It's very much a social thing. People often say they join because they care about the environment, but they stay involved because they love the people. We had a couple retire recently after 30 years, and they were just bringing their stuff back. They were so devastated that they just physically couldn't do the work anymore. So yeah, we run a whole suite of training too, so you can keep learning all about sort of different ways of doing the work or different plants and things. So why is it successful? Well, it's all about people, having fantastic volunteers, having partners like councils. So we do work with 20 different councils across South Australia, so you really are the backbone of supporting this program, and by, essentially we're managing volunteers on your behalf to do this fantastic work. And yeah, we've got a fantastic team of people, and although it's a long-running model, we're always sort of looking at adapting things. Obviously we have to continually, it's very much a changing world, so always looking, and those one-off activities have really grown because we know there's more and more people who want to dip in and out of volunteering, so we're looking at more of those opportunities. We also bring other value adds in, so we were very successful in getting a grant through Rebecca Sharkey, actually, Environmental Restoration Fund, and we had 2 areas we worked on 2 of the creeks in your area and did some creek restoration, trail restoration and planting work that really brought another little burst of activity. They were worth about $60,000. So volunteers love it. Yes, they feel like, it is a tough time, I think, a tough time in lots of ways. We've all been through COVID, we've been through, extreme events with a lot of social and economic challenges, and people like to be able to do something positive. It's very actually empowering to be able to feel like amidst the global problems and challenges we face, you can get out there and actually it's good for your health, it's good for the local environment, you're with nice people and you're doing something useful. And yeah, so the investment that we're seeking in the current year, I've just put up there for you. And hopefully I've done it in my time frame. So I'd love to ask any questions. I'd also like to invite you all to come on a bush action team. We'd love to invite councillors. We could find a date that would, we're running activities regularly, but yeah, perhaps we can look at a way for anyone who'd like to come out and have first-hand experience. That'd be lovely to welcome you.
Have we got any questions? Councillor Coomans?
Thank you, Mayor Parks. Members, you mentioned $33,000 of funding you're seeking.
Yes.
Where does it normally come from? You also mentioned Rebecca Sharkey as providing some of it. Does it normally come from and local councils?
It's a mixture, yes.
And is it private funding as well? Or?
We have some private funding. Well, certainly at Trees for Life we fundraise Last year we fundraised to run some of the bush action teams because the Hills and Fleurieu Landscape Board haven't provided the same level of funding that we have in Green Adelaide for Bush for Life. So we're looking at other ways we can supplement that. But it's definitely a model of, we bring as many different funding partners to the table.
Looking at your map,
Yep.
I noticed around Mount Compass there's nothing, but were you aware that the Mount Compass Area School, which has a fairly significant
Yes.
farm,
Yes.
is working on revegetating a fairly large area,
Yes.
including kangaroo fencing, what have you?
Yep.
Have they been in contact with you, or are you working with
We
them?
haven't worked with them. I actually know about that because I know Nature Glenelg Trust has been doing some work there. Yeah, no, we haven't in recent years. We've had some private Bush for Life sites around Mount Compass, but not council sites. So we also have some private Bush for Life sites that we have worked with over the years.
Councillor Maidment.
You have been funding this for a number of years. That's the current year request.
That was my
for the-
question. What
yes.
historically has
This
Alexandrina...
is the same level. It's just got CPI. So it's just
Okay,
a
that's
CPI
good.
request.
Yep. Good.
Councillor Thornton.
And how is that figure worked out? Like, is it to do with how many sites we have in
Yes,
our
it's
area?
a per site.
Yep.
Yeah.
Councillor Gardner.
Do you work with Hindmarsh Island Land Care?
Not in Bush for Life particularly because we're not, well, I know they've got a nursery and doing other things. I mean, we certainly collaborate. I actually chair the SA Nature Alliance, so we work, at Trees for Life with lots of other groups, and projects from time to time might come up where we'll, work with a land care group, not necessarily directly through Bush for Life. But I think we've all got similar objectives. We just got different approaches, and we all support each other when we can.
Councillor Scott.
Yeah, thank you for that. The organisation has an outstanding history, really. Sort of like going down to the surf to go surfing when there's a flat sea with a surfboard. It'll come one day, and that's what Trees for Life have done. I remember when it started, and actually in the name of Men of the Trees,
Yes,
its original term,
absolutely.
and it was just so over the horizon stuff, and yet you've stuck with it, and it's just grown and grown and grown, and now they're trees, really, by comparison to what there were, trees everywhere. I know you've got a site there near the Currency Creek Cemetery, and I just wondered if it's possible for us to have some sort of communication with the groups that work there, because quite a lot of effort was put in, and there was some planting that was probably not altogether appropriate in relation to the cemetery.
Okay, yep.
And volunteer labour is so valuable. We don't want one hole in the wrong spot when you consider it's all being done voluntarily. So,
Absolutely. When was that planting done?
it would be last year, or was it the year before?
Yeah, so that might have been an ERF funded one too. So what you mean? Perhaps we can take this offline. And you can, I'll share my email address. I can reach out to everyone. I'll send you a quick note, and then if you've got any other follow-up questions, because also I'm probably not the best question to ask detailed questions of as well. So I can get that back to you about that.
No, that's all right. But no,
Yeah.
they do great work, and some of those sort of fairly barren areas
Yeah.
that were barren, that have now gradually been planted up over the years, are now bearing fruit,
Fantastic.
so to speak.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Councillor Oliver.
Thank you. Just wondering, obviously you're very reliant on the volunteers.
Yep.
Do you have enough volunteers?
We'd always love more volunteers, yeah, especially adopting a site. That's the bit that we are finding harder than we used to get those site carers. Maybe when you get some affordable housing, you can become a bush care volunteer. We can so yeah, we'd like to work. We'd love to work more on promotion with council. That's probably an opportunity. But coming out to a bush action team day is a good way to get a feel for it. We run workshops as well, so we'll run at least 1 or 2 workshops down this way a year.
So therefore, is there an opportunity for council to promote
Yes,
the
absolutely.
volunteer activity
Yeah, we'd
and
love that.
enrolments?
We'd certainly
'Cause,
love
we've
that.
obviously got a register
Yep.
of volunteers. We've
Yep.
got a mechanism of advertising publicly.
Absolutely, yeah.
It'd be great to be able to give you a hand.
Absolutely. What we find, volunteers typically come new to the environment movement and they want to plant, because that's what people know about. You know, we've all had an experience tree planting at school. So when you talk about bush care, it's a bit alien to them often. So we do find people sometimes come to a planting day and then we'll say, oh, why don't you come and try bush care too? And once they do, they get quite hooked, because you actually learn a lot in a bush setting because you're in all the existing native vegetation, but sometimes it's a little bit more of a barrier to get them over the line. But once they do, yeah, very rewarding.
Any further questions? No? So
Thank you so much for your time, and I'll
Thank you
follow
very
up
much.
with some more info for everyone, and so you can reach me and ask any questions.
So number 4 is petitions. There are none. Item 5 is questions with notice. There's a question from Councillor Oliver regarding affordable and social housing. A question from Councillor Miller regarding the Goolwa Oval Recreational Precinct Master Plan. There's another one from Councillor Miller regarding public convenience facilities strategy. Councillor Miller regarding the Port Elliot Oval Precinct ownership and users management model. And the answer to those questions are in the agenda. Item 6 is questions without notice. Are there any questions without notice? No, that's good. So 7 is notice of motion. 7.1 is a motion which I have put up and moved regarding the renaming of the Goolwa Sports Stadium, which, for those of you who aren't sure which it is, the stadium is the basketball stadium which is behind the high school, which was paid for by the community. It's got nothing to do with the Oval. So is there a seconder? Councillor Scott, you wish to second it?
And speak, if I may. This is a great initiative, I believe, and I would really seek you all to support it. There's quite a bit of history here, and it's very coincidental that we are doing this on the day which is the 40th anniversary of the first Goolwa picnic race meeting, which the late dear old Jim Baker was part of the committee of and helped get that going. Goolwa was a very different place back in those days when the Apex Club was here. In fact, I'm not sure whether just before that, we probably didn't have a doctor, didn't have a pharmacy, and not much happened in Goolwa. And the Apex Club, with those people that are named plus others on that supporting document, did an immense amount of work and really put Goolwa on the map, and some great things occurred, and and Jim Baker was part of it. And he wasn't just going to meetings, he built things, and when things need to be done and manufactured, Jim was right in the centre of it. He was a great townsperson. His passing is a great loss to the district, and I think it's very, very fitting that that stadium that went on so long with fundraising and everything should be named in his honour. So I'm very happy to support it. Second it. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Councillor Maidment.
Yeah, I can't remember that far back that kangaroos were jumping down Cadell Street, but I don't really think we need a report. I don't know why you just don't name it after him in any case, because that letter to the councillors, that just gives historical context to all of this. And if we don't do anything straight away and we lose that historical information, there could be an addition to that basketball complex, and then we'd have to name it after some insignificant politician. So I'd rather it be named after Mr. Baker. I didn't personally know the man, but I know that he is a local hero, just from what I've gathered since reading this letter and talking to people from Goolwa. So why do we need a report?
Any further Councillor Oliver.
I'm just wondering, just a couple of questions. Would this be a naming in perpetuity? So would it be forever, or would it be for 25 years or a certain time period? So therefore, I just wonder, is it going to be as relevant in 100 years' time? To be able to name it like that, do we need to go out to public consultation? And without knowing too much about it, are there other names or people that we could consider?
As far as I'm concerned, it'll be done forever. And the people who were the fundraisers who raised the money and built it all signed that letter. And they're all leading businessmen in this town and major employers, as Jim was he had a large company at one stage.
Thank you.
Councillor Coomans.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Parks. Look, in principle, I don't have an issue with this. I just wonder, is there any council policies that need to be interrogated first in relation to doing this sort of thing? I think Councillor Oliver mentioned about any requirements for public consultation. And I guess the only nigger in the woodpile with me is that at the moment it's called the Goolwa Sports Stadium, and Goolwa is such a powerful brand that I'm just wondering if you call it after a person. I know other areas have had the same issue. You call it after a person and people say, well, where is it? So I'm just wondering whether it then has a sort of a locational issue that you're not able to determine where it is. But in principle, if somebody like this has done so much work for it, then it would be a great honour. But that's just my two bobs with it.
I draw the parallel to the recreation grounds, which are called the Brian Dugmore Recreation Grounds. No mention of Goolwa in it. Everybody knows where it is. He looked after it for 40 odd years. 50, in his own time, until he could hardly walk. Councillor Livingston.
I'm fully supportive of this motion. I'm also with Councillor Maidment in relation to making a decision to name it tonight. Is there a possibility of doing that, amending the motion?
Sorry?
Is there a possibility of amending the motion to put forward actually agreeing to name it tonight, rather than bringing it back for a report?
I don't mind, but Councillor Scott, do you?
I would be happy for it to be done immediately, unless it's contravening any regulation.
No, so that's all right. Councillor Thornton.
I was going to say I'm all for it too. I think it's great. I do kind of mimic some of Councillor Coomans' responses in terms of in terms of finding it. I don't know whether it has to have James Baker Basketball Stadium instead. So if there's obviously all the locals will know where it is, but if you're coming up this way, you would Google like Goolwa Basketball Stadium or something along those lines, and it may not come up, but I think it's a great initiative. I'm just wondering about that as well.
Any further questions or discussion? No, I think, I can... Sorry? Yep. So we've changed that. Yep. I think, I can't remember exactly what's in the letter, but so one of the things they did, out with Investigator now have their environment centre out on Currency Creek near the lavender farm. There was a bit of land that was a part of a potato farm. It was a bit undulating, and they used to have mud rallies there with those cart things and buggies. And and Jim's business was Alifar Marine, and they built boats, and they built boats that went from here overseas, major big ferries that carried over 100 passengers. They built one for the Sultan of Brunei and delivered it themselves by sea. Huge, all jet driven, and out of that came in New Zealand. They'd got onto these jet boat races, and so they converted this area into a jet boat racing track, and they used to pump the water out of the creek into it for the race, run the race and go. But it was all run by Apex and raised bucket loads of money. Heaps and heaps of people used to come. And that money all went into building this building. And, you know, as I said earlier, the people who have put this forward and requested it they're the core group of people who are still left alive that were in there working that, driving it and raised the money and built it. And tradesmen in the area did work themselves for no charge, a bit like the Strathalbyn Club, they were working on it after hours. So it's a great thing, and yeah, and he is a loss to the community. But yeah, so yeah, so I think I'll leave it there and put it up and put it to you. So, yeah, a question, yeah.
Look, there's a mix of terms in the letter about Jim or James. I'm assuming that the family has some awareness of and whether they would prefer Jim or James?
James is his name. James is what his wife calls him. Jim's what people around the town call him, but his name's James. And so, yeah, I mean, this family's really, I mean, if you know, if you're involved in the, we're all involved in the River Murray because it's part of our life. Jim's father, Ron, wrote the original River Murray pilot, which is a book which tells you all about the river from the Murray mouth all the way to the New South Wales border. Every snag, every bend, every sandbar, every marker. James rewrote it several times, and now Scott, Ron's grandson, is taking it up, and they're continuing with it. So this is the sort of family we're talking about, that's all, yeah. So if you're happy, I'll put the recommendation or the motion to you. So all those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. Thanks very much. 7.2 is a motion from Councillor Miller regarding the Goolwa Oval Recreation Precinct Master Plan Stage 2 progress update. Councillor Miller isn't here, unfortunately, to move it, but if you wish, there's a number of motions here from Councillor Miller. If somebody wishes to move and second it, that's fine, it can go ahead. If it doesn't get moved or seconded, it can come back to another meeting, but it's up to you how you want to handle it. But we can't just take it out because she's not here. So, of course, I'll ask you first one, is there a mover for it first? Councillor Thornton? And did you wish to speak to it? No. Is there a seconder? No seconder? No. So that will lapse through want of a seconder. That doesn't, as I said, that doesn't prevent Councillor Miller bringing that one back if she wishes to. The other one, next one is 7.3 from Councillor Miller regarding the Audit and Risk Committee independent member process of appointment, and there's a motion there. So does anybody would like to move that? Or we can wait. Not until it's been moved or seconded, no. Councillor Thornton? Is there a seconder? No, so that will also lapse. Councillor Coomans, you're seconding it?
I did read through this and I thought it had some merit.
Hang on. It's not are you seconding it? If
yeah,
it's not
yeah.
so then you go ahead, because you can't speak unless it's been moved and seconded.
I know. No, look, I'll second that, and I think it does have some merit, so I'm happy to support it.
Now, Councillor Oliver.
Thanks. Look, I have trouble reconciling this. I'm not sure whether we actually need it. My thought was the Audit Committee is already empowered to do this. The Audit Committee has been working through its appropriate steps. It will come back to Council. Council will approve it. I'm also concerned, so I'm not sure whether it's necessary at all, this motion. I'm also concerned, what if we can't find a suitable candidate? And we have got a high bar that we're setting. We want a change manager, we want someone with HR experience, we don't want an accountant, we don't want another engineer. So I think it's not going to be a simple appointment. Also too, I'd just like to note that the chairperson of the Audit Committee will be absent during this period, and it's my belief that we should actually delay this appointment and interview process until she is present and able to participate in the process. Alice McCleary, if you're not aware, is probably one of the best or greatest corporate advisors in Australia. In fact, I can't believe that we've got her. I've got to pinch myself to say how fantastic is it that she comes here and works with us. So, you know, while I support the intent of it, I'd like to actually put it on hold, wait till the chairperson gets back, get the chairperson involved, and make sure this is a critical appointment that we get absolutely the right person. Thanks for your indulgence.
Did you want to clarify anything about it? Any explanation?
Through the Chair, what this motion is proposing to do is that when the interview process takes place, that it doesn't go back to the Audit and Risk Committee first, it goes straight to Council without getting their endorsement prior to Council. So that's what that's essentially changing, but do understand that Alice will be away for a period of time.
Thanks for clarifying that. I'd still like to insist that we wait until Alice returns.
Mayor Parks, I think on that basis it's probably wise for me to withdraw my secondment of that motion.
Pardon?
I withdraw my seconding of that motion.
Right. So it's gone. So now is there a second? Anybody else wish to second it? No. So that will lapse through one of a seconder. No, I can't bring it from the floor. Yeah. 7.4 is Councillor Miller regarding the Goolwa Wharf Shed commercial review and discussion paper from July 2022, and there's a motion on that before you. Yep, as Nigel said, it's been tabled anyway, so. Moved Councillor Thornton. Is there a seconder? No? Yeah, that Nigel's.
No,
so that will lapse through one to a seconder. Now, I'm just looking with the Audit and Risk Committee one. I'm just concerned about any urgency regarding the timing of what we're doing. So, Councillor Oliver, if we go back to that, if you wanted to move a motion that we delay what you want to do,
Yes, please.
So you want to delay the process until
The return of the chairperson,
right
and like her to be involved.
for the interview process. Yeah. Is there a second, Councillor Gardy? Do you want to second it? Is there? We'll just make sure we get. Are you happy with that? Yep. So is any discussion relating to that, Councillor Nicholson?
Thank you. Can I ask a question? How long until the chairperson is likely to be available, and what are the impacts of delaying this process?
Trish will give us the update on that. That's her department.
Through the chair. The expression of interest has already closed and we've received several applicants. It's no substantial issue to advise them that the interview will take place once the chair's returned. and we can confirm their availability for that. The chair's scheduled to be back in the country on the 17th of May, 2 days prior to the 19th Audit Committee.
Is there any further questions or discussion? So I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. It's an important one, that's all. I'll leave it hanging. 7.5 is a motion from Councillor Scott regarding affordable and social housing land availability. It's moved by Councillor Scott. Do you wish to speak to it?
Yes, thank you. We have had, I think as long as I've been in council, there has been talk of housing needs, affordable housing, etc., and so far not one brick has been laid. And I'm very conscious of this, and I am hearing the Prime Minister saying that last year that one of their areas of focus in the coming year and the coming budget would be money for affordable housing. I want us to be on the front foot with this. We've got land. We can't, I don't think it's reasonable to expect one area of government to carry the whole load. And I think that with council like ours that has blocks of land that people do not want us to sell, that's been made quite clear, rather than it sitting there languishing, doing nothing and having to be mown by our staff, why don't we get organised, and if money becomes available, we step straight into it and start building affordable housing. As I say, we have land, I think, in most of the towns. We have land, certainly in Port Elliot, Middleton, and Goolwa, we have land, I believe, that would be quite suitable. And one of the points that was made clear to me was that we need to be ready, because when this money pops up, a lot of it may well be metropolitan centric. There may only be a small amount available for the regions. And I would like to think that if we're ready, we can perhaps score some of that money and get on with the job. And so I'm seeking your support for this. Hopefully, I know the staff are busy, but I would like to think that we could get this report quite soon and identify the land, and then start having suitable plans for suitable buildings ready in the hope that the money will become available. I'm not asking us to spend money. We're giving the land, is my idea, and the federal government hopefully will come forward with some grants. And if they do, then let's grab it with both hands and really make something happen. I envisage it for the women in that 60 age group that we're told are very much at risk and make up quite a large amount of those that are needy, and I think they will fit in with the surrounding areas pretty well, and we'll be doing them a great service.
So do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Livingston? Anybody wish to speak to it? Yep.
I'd completely support this motion. It is a true example of being proactive rather than reactive, and we all know that affordable and social housing is an issue in our area. So if we are proactive and on the front foot, then we will be in a great position to make a difference to our region.
Councillor Nicholson, yep.
Yes, I agree, and I think along with the local affordable housing plan that that will already be underway, this is a complementary council activity that can hopefully put us in a good position to land some funding that might become available, and yeah, get some houses built for our residents and communities.
Any further discussion or questions? Did you wish to write a reply? You've spoken enough already.
I think it's pretty clear, thank you.
So I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. 7.6 is a confidential item What I'll do is seek, we don't want to have to kick people out and then go outside and wait and then come back in. So if we can, I'll get your approval to move to item 10, to move this item to item 10 for later in the evening when we do the other confidential item. So all those in favour of that? Yes, that's carried unanimously. So we need to go to the next item, which is item 8, which is administration reports, and 8.1 is the Middleton, Malang and Port Elliot master plans, formal consultation, and there is a recommendation there before you. Is there a mover, Councillor Maidment? Seconder, Councillor Thornton. Any discussion? People are very keenly waiting for this. Councillor Scott.
Yes, I've tried to wade through all these. I'm just intrigued about the interpretation of what happened at the village conversations, and I went to all but one of them, I think, of appropriate growth. And that is a term that can be viewed from various angles. Appropriate to whom? And it was very clear that the people did not want the towns to be swamped. And yet I fear that we're on a long road towards our towns being made a whole lot bigger than they are now and being put under pressure. And I think I can't emphasise enough how we've got to look at this whole planning thing, not just how many houses we can fit on a block of land, or where's the next 10 acres that we're going to, or 4.5 hectares that we're going to turn into housing. It's how does it fit in with our whole area? I mean, no one talks about, are we going to have another laneway, another road from Goolwa to Victor for people to get through there, because the other one's going to be so slow and blocked with cars on an everyday basis that it'll be hopeless trying to get through. Are we going to do a duplicate with Kessel Road? And or various other things that I feel are not being considered with this whole planning thing. Oh, we're going to have a duplicate highway down from Adelaide. What's going to happen when it gets to the top of Clunnigs Hill? A heap of cars coming down there. What's going to happen to the roads when they get to the bottom end? Are we going to just completely open everything up, or are we going to have these log jams and people are going to groan at the thought? You know, there was a concept where you could have had the bypass coming through and then shooting up Mentone Road and straight across and coming up to the top of the hill. Mentone Road is completely shot to pieces now because of subdivision that's gone through between it. So you've lost that avenue as a direct line through. And I'm just really concerned, looking way into the future, long after we've left council, that we may well be unknowingly leaving a legacy for the future generations whose parents used to love the area. And someone said to me the other day, they've come retired down here, lovely area. If we keep on and on and on loading it up, it won't be a lovely area at all. It will have been a lovely area once before. But it will be difficult to get around the area with whether you've got an electric car or a diesel car or a petrol car. Makes no difference. Car's a car. And just trying to travel through, yes, we'll have that bypass for the heavy transport past Middleton and beyond. But even that's not particularly, not really smart, because you've got to go around that dogleg round towards Nangawuka and Arambira and then round. There's nothing. It's all a bit hodgepodge, and I'm just really concerned. We've got this thing now on the side of Middleton where that part was just the last remnant of the old part coming into Middleton. That's gone. And you can see it's going to be bracket creep because they'll go over the road. Once you do one, there'll be a reason to go over the road. We had that deferred last council. We deferred that. because it wasn't wanted. Now it's gradually creeping in and so on. The same will happen all the way through, and lack of really good planning. And I know we now have Kylie Weymouth doing some work on that, but I fear that with government pressure, that we are this growth for growth's sake. It's going to, I think, we've got to be very, very careful that we don't spoil our area, and we are the custodians of a superb part of South Australia and of Australia. And I'm just very concerned about the long-term future of how it's all going, I'm afraid.
Any further discussion? Councillor Coomans?
Look, I respect what Councillor Scott has said, and I know he has some concerns about this, but what we're really doing here is going out for public consultation. And if you look at the executive summary, it doesn't in fact say, whilst the plans are being prepared directly from community input, it is considered that formal consultation regarding the final draft be undertaken with the community in order to consider any further feedback before council formally endorses them. So I think we're just trying to get some community input before we then consider that and then come up with whether we're going to endorse it or not, or whether we're going to make any changes. I think that's what we're really trying to do here. With all due respects to you, sir.
Any further discussion? It's exactly right. We're not going to go ahead and do it. We're going to ask the community what they think of it and get their input. It's important. So, Councillor Maidment, do you want to? No. So I'll put the recommendation to you. All those in favour? Against? Anybody against? It's carried unanimously. (8.2) is the funding deed for the pedestrian crossing facility at the intersection of Hayes Street and Porter Street in Goolwa, and the construction of the 3 pedestrian crossings at Middleton. And there's a recommendation there that we do. Councillor Coomans.
I'm happy for you to sign those deeds.
Councillor Scott. Second. Councillor Livingston. Oh, it's done. Any discussion? Councillor Scott.
Just very self-explanatory, but it's very important, and I think it's a very special moment that we're actually at the stage where, after 3 or 4 years of lobbying, that we are now heading towards the construction phase, and I look forward to it being done, and it'll be done by our own people, so it'll be done very well, and it'll be great to see it in action. I know people in Middleton will be very happy to have it, and it'll make life a lot safer.
Any further discussion? Councillor Nicholson.
I agree. Just briefly, I'd like to acknowledge all of the work that has gone in over the years by council, by elected members, by community groups and individuals in getting these pedestrian crossings happening. It's a very exciting project to finally get underway.
Any further? I think the bonus is it's not costing us any money. The government are paying for it, which is great. So I've put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. 8.3 is delivering the AID 2040 6-monthly progress report. A recommendation that we receive that report. Move, Councillor Maidment. The seconder, Councillor Nicholson. Any discussion? Councillor Maidment, you should have spoke when you'd gone.
I'll only speak once anyway, so that's fine. Just a few things around the A240 report and under transport connections and advocacy. Can we communicate our work in this space to the community? There's lots of things happening around, and it's come up for discussion about the lack of transport connections within our region time and time again over the last few months. Under climate response, we have the ongoing 30-year master plan and regional opportunities. I wanted to talk about the opportunity to before the state government bumps in and tells us where we're heading with this, to make sure that we shore that up. Under 3.1 with climate response, we had the Alexandrina Youth Forum hosted at Goolwa Secondary College last year. For this year, 2023, where could we have one of these in Strathalbyn where there's 1,000 secondary students, and as opposed to say the 300 down here? And with appropriate growth, we want to attract and retain younger residents to live, work and play in Alexandrina. That's the motherhood statement. And so we do urgently need to progress the open space and recreation strategy with a lesser focus on where the older generation lives and more in the areas where the young people are moving into, because it's all about work, play and retaining young people, younger residents in the area. So I'd just like to see more of a focus on that strategy applied to the growth areas in our region.
Any further discussion? Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you. I'd like to make a comment just about my appreciation of this report. I've had a really good look at the A2040 document in terms of my role in our council and community, and I really appreciate this detailed update and all of the work that I know must have gone in. Thank you.
Any further questions or discussion? So I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. 8.4 is the lease and licence policy activities, January to March quarterly report, and there is a recommendation that we receive that report. Moved Councillor Oliver. Seconder Councillor Maidment. Any discussion? No? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. 8.5 is the Port Malang Historic Railway Museum 10-year lease request, and there's a recommendation there with a couple of dot points on it. Is there a move, Councillor Gardner? Seconder, Councillor Nicholson. Any discussion? Up to do a marvellous job. So, all those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. .6 is the merit for once-off developer contribution, and there's a recommendation there before you. Is there a mover for that? We're just receiving it. You can, you can just move. If you don't want to do two, you can just do one, receive it, and not do anything else, or you can do one and two, whatever you. Councillor Livingston, used.
Happy to just do number one.
Do it number one. Is there a seconder for number one, Councillor Oliver? Is there any discussion? Just receiving it. If not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. Part 2, is there anybody wish to move part 2? Yeah. Yeah.
Through the Chair, I just did want to clarify that what Council moved in February this year was two parts of the motion. The first motion was that we prepare a report. The second motion, part of the motion, was that we seek feedback on this initiative during consultation of the draft 23-24 annual business plan and budget and rating policy. So it is directing Council to go out and consult on this during the annual business plan. So what the recommendation before you at item 2 is saying is to get that consultation, which you resolved in February this year, we're proposing that we move it to the revenue strategy, which is another report which Council was asked to prepare. So let's combine those two things together and let's just consult on one document. So kind of asking to seek your support on this one. For
So
the second part.
do we have a mover for that, Councillor Gardner? Councillor Gardner and seconded Councillor Coomans. Is there any discussion? No, so I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. 8.7 is the South Australian Wooden Boat Festival 2023 highlights report, and there is a recommendation there that we receive that report of their meetings for March 23, 6th of March 23 and the 20th of March 23. Move Councillor Livingston. Seconded Councillor Nicholson. Oh, Oliver, sorry. Any discussion, questions? Councillor Livingston.
No discussion. I just wanted to note that we have lots of registrations this year, which is fantastic, and it's in 2 weeks' time, and it would be great to see everyone's support there.
Any further discussion or questions? Councillor Scott.
Talking of a shuttle bus, is that from Goolwa Central out to the quays, or is that what the shuttle bus was intended, or was it going round to the further round to the slipway, or what?
Councillor Livingston, you can probably clarify that when you sum up. Is anybody anything else? So you go ahead and...
Sure. So the shuttle bus will be every half hour, and it will be going around to the Cove in Curran Keys. And it's in line with it starts at 9 and it will finish at 5 in line with the Cockle train.
Thank you very much. So I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. 8.8 is the Heritage Advisory Committee Highlights Report, and there's a recommendation that we receive their minutes from the 15th of March. Move Councillor Gardner.
May I say something?
Yep.
I belong to the Heritage Advisory Committee, and we had our first meeting, and there are some very interesting people on that committee with lots of expertise. So I think it's going to be a particularly good committee, advisory committee, this term.
Do we have a seconder for that? Councillor Nicholson. Any further discussion, questions? Not. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. 8.9 is the minutes of the Section 41 Committee of the Ratalang, Basham Beach and Horseshoe Bay Advisory Committee of the 9th of February 2023. There's a recommendation that we receive and note those minutes. Moved Councillor Scott. Second to Councillor Nicholson. Any discussion? Okay, so I put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. 8.10 is the Regional Public Health Plan update, and there's a recommendation there that we note and we note and receive the report. So is there a mover for that? Move Councillor Maidment, second to Councillor Nicholson. Is there any discussion? No. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. 8.11 is the Adelaide Hills Regional Waste Management Authority second quarter budget review for 22-23, and there's a recommendation that we receive that report. Move Councillor Maidment. Is there a seconder? Councillor Oliver. Any discussion? If not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? It's That's carried unanimously. Eight point 12 is the Fleurieu Regional Waste Authority second quarter budget review for 2022-23, and there's a recommendation that we receive that. Moved, Councillor Oliver. Is there a seconder? Councillor Nicholson. Any discussion? Councillor Oliver.
Just following up on the email discussion and the budget discussion, I'm personally not very comfortable with the proposed 13% increase in their costs, and I'd like to hope that we're going to take up the Mayor's suggestion of the weekend to write to them and ask them to reduce their budget. The number in my own mind of them and the other subsidiaries or related parties is that we should be asking them for no more than the 5% increase. If it's okay for us to have a conservative year and rein all the costs in, I think that these people can too. And they're dealing largely with non-discretional type activities. So, you know, they're not making big decisions, I don't think, on changing the world. I think we need them to be as tight as possible on their budget. Thank you.
So as the mover, do you want to add to that recommendation that council write to the Waste Authority regarding our concerns around next year's budget?
Yes, please.
So we'll put that in there. Do you want to... Nigel will just work some wording out. You happy with the way that's been changed there? And Councillor Nicholson, the second, are you happy with that?
Sorry, yes.
Any further discussion or questions relating to that? No? So I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. 8.13 is the Fleurieu Regional Aquatic Centre Authority, the second quarter budget review, and there's a recommendation that we receive that. Moved, Councillor Oliver. Seconder, Councillor Gardner. Is there any discussion? Councillor Oliver, you should when you move it, if you want to speak, when you move it, say I want to speak.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the clarification. Well, I've got to say, wow, obviously there's a lot of external cost factors impacting this, and this is going to have a serious risk on our budget, so I'd like to mirror my comments made on the previous report. This one's of even more concern. It seems that they do have technological or other problems, energy problems. I welcome the review that the CEO is leading into the operation of that centre, and again, I'd like to ask that we ask them to reduce their budget or keep their budget contained to within 5%, same as the others. Thank you.
Are you happy with the change that's been made there? Move it. So, Councillor Gardner, are you okay with that change as a second?
I think it would be great if Councillor Oliver went on the board. This is a very difficult situation that we are in. It's always been a challenge, but it's it's an amazing place, and many people throughout this southern Fleurieu attend. There are many challenges, and the biggest one that we're facing is the electricity. We've just had to negotiate a new contract with our electricity provider. We also have not only challenges, but there are exciting things that are likely to happen. and that may, or maybe I could say will actually help in terms of developing the solar or the building, and at the moment that's what is being planned. But one of the biggest challenges we have is to keep our EO, and we've just lost another really good one. And it's not because they don't enjoy the work, but the amount of work that that person has to do is quite huge, because we're always playing catch up. I would be very happy to step down as a board member for Alexandrina in order for you to go and be part of that. We could perhaps have a talk about that later on. I'm very glad that Councillor Nicholson is now party to the board, because it is a lonely job and it is a difficult one. We actually have a very good board. What's the saying? Something about a pig's ear and a sow? I'm not quite sure. A silk purse, yes. And that's what we struggle with. Thank you, Councillor.
Councillor Maidment.
Yeah, I'll be voting against this.
Thank you. Councillor Gardner, are you accepting that change to the recommendation?
No.
So you take it, we're not accepting it, so so you can foreshadow it if this fails. Well, so we're back with the original recommendation. So Councillor Maidment, you should speak to it.
Yeah, I won't be voting for this. We heard from Fracker late last year or earlier this year that they put up a 4-year projected budget, and they were going to lose 750k this year. So you add the extra 240 here, that's nearly $1 million down the drain. And I know it's a difficult job. Maybe we should mothball it for a while until the solar can be installed and put. And if the revolving door of EOs, and there's not much hope of getting one in the very near future because of the workload. Yeah, if I was running a business, I'd be looking at mothballing it, so I won't be handing them another 120k.
Any further discussion? Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you. I have really enjoyed being Councillor Gardner's proxy on this board. It's, as she said, it's a fantastic board and a real challenge to operate the Fleurieu Regional Aquatic Centre, because it is an expensive service for our region, but it is a highly valued one for people across the Fleurieu. And, you know, similar to a library, it is a service rather than perhaps a revenue maker for council. The cost of power, electricity has gone up significantly, and that's a real challenge. And from my observations and participation so far, I can see that this board does not put this number to council lightly. It is loath to ask for more money, honestly, and I think that this is a fair request to continue operating this important service for our region for the next year, and also acknowledging that the board is aware and looking at how, you know, whatever can be done to improve operations, improve efficiencies, and I think this is a very reasonable request for an important service. Thank you.
Any further? Councillor Scott.
we have known for a long time that this is just losing money year after year after year. This is an additional amount, and it's a serious amount of money. And I honestly appreciate them. I mean, I was there when we were building it. I had my say. I just came into council when they were 3 parts of the way through planning it. And I honestly don't think that we can expect our ratepayers, majority of whom don't use it, to prop up this thing. I appreciate how important it is and how the people that do use it, particularly disabled people, how very important it is, or those that do the therapy pool. But there's got to be a limit. Now that 120,000, if we put $2 onto every visit, we'd probably half pay for that just by putting the price up. It's been said to me that it is so cheap going to the pool. And I'm thinking, why? When we are sitting here trying to get our heads around how on earth we're going to make this thing pay, and the public are telling us that it's so cheap to go to the pool. And I'm just at a loss. I'm not on the pool board. I appreciate how difficult it is. I think the whole, just even the way the thing was positioning of it, as I tried to point out before it was built, is going to increase cost with heating and cooling. But just, I think that's beyond the limit. And we've got to do a serious rethink about that pool, because it will just go on and on and on, bleeding us white. And to have 120,000 from December to now that's needed is just, I'm sorry, but I believe it's beyond the pale, and there needs to be a radical rethink of how that place is run, because I'm sure when the interesting thing is the people that were all for the pool didn't come to the public meetings that were held, the public meeting at Middleton. I hardly saw a person that had swum at the pool there when we were trying to agonise our way through how it was going to be done. And now that we're left, we are, as co-owners of it, left. Bear in mind, that's only half. $250,000 between December and June, that they need to keep going. And it's just going on and on and on. I'm sorry.
Is any further discussion, questions? No, so I will put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? That is lost. So, as Nigel was saying, so what do we do? Shut the door? No. I think probably maybe the option may be to go with the recommendation that we receive it, but we add Councillor Oliver's foreshadowed option to the end of it about the increase.
I guess, if I may speak, the situation they're in is the situation they're in. I appreciate everything that Margaret and everyone else.
So you're moving your...
Yes.
Yeah, right.
But I do think we do need to, deal with it. There is a pathway that the CEO has projected forward where he's taking control of the situation. He's going to undertake a review with the Victor Harbour Council, and I welcome that. And Margaret, thank you for all that you've done, for it. And it is a great place, but we do need to deal with the costs. And that's why I can accept where they're at now, and I accept, but we do need to try and cap it next year.
But is there a seconder for that we're going with the Councillor Livingston? Is there any discussion? We're receiving the report, and we're going back to them and ask them to relook at it with a maximum of 5% increase. Yeah, yeah.
Through the chair, FRACA has written to us and said, this is where we're at today. This is what's going to occur in the next 6 months. We do know that if the doors are open, that if we continue doing what we're doing, it's going to cost this much money to get to the end of the year. It's very difficult not to endorse that, given that this is going to occur. Electricity is still going to flow and it's going to happen. So what Councillor Oliver is proposing to do is say, look, we're endorsing what's happening at the moment. We acknowledge that it's going to be an extra 120,000 to get us to the end of the year. But we're just saying to you, please make sure when you're looking at next year, see if there's a way to keep it to a maximum of 5%. Councillor Oliver is also correct that I am working closely with Victor Harbour CEO to have a look at what's happening over at FRACA. Presently, the CEO of Victor Harbour is also the EO of FRACA, so that we can get in there and have a look at the business and see what can be done. I flagged to the Mayor that it's very difficult to not do anything with the budget they've sent to us. So what we're trying to do now is try with Councillor Oliver's motion to see if we can endorse the budget, but also send the message at the same time. That's where we're at.
Is there any further, Councillor Maidment?
Just a question. Given that when I came into this chamber in 2018, they were running at a $350,000 loss, and last year they asked us to stump up $750,000. You're trying to put a lid on it. It hasn't happened in the past. So where do you think the synergies and the economies are going to come from now? Because it's up to $1 million now.
That's what we're asking them to do. We're asking them to look at it and make sure. When we built the pool, we knew it was going to cost money. Nobody went into building this pool knowing it was going to make money. No pool in Australia makes money. So you value the pool based on what it gives your community. And I know it gives our community an enormous amount of support and visitors, but a lot of people in our community use it, a lot more than people realise. So is there anybody else got any discussion? Question, yeah.
Well then, if they look at it, we've asked them again, or we're going to ask them again, as the CEO suggested, to do something. We've been sort of asking since it was 350. Now, it's a lot easier to get control of 350 than it is to get control of $1 million. So what are we going to do if they can't get control of it? To me, it's not just one horse has bolted, the whole mob's gone through the fence. And I just wonder, what are we going to do? There, we've got to the stage where I believe there has to be some firm strategy about how that place is run, because in the next term, it'll probably be up to 2 million loss in a year if we're not careful. You know, it's just go on exponentially. That's what I'm concerned about, and we're getting through it.
Yeah, we've gone past the question a long time ago. Councillor Livingston?
I just wanted to point out that in the report, it does say that FRACA is in the process of looking at an application for $500,000 grant from the Office for Recreation, Sport and Racing to assist with the installing solar generation. So if the major issue with this business is electricity, I don't doubt that they're not taking steps to try and minimise that cost, and that would be one step towards it. And like Councillor Nicholson said, it is a service to our community, just like a library is. So if our CEO, if Victor Harbour CEO is investigating it further, then I believe that we are now being proactive to change things.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? In favour?
Sorry, apologies. Did we already vote on it, and now this is a new motion?
No, we voted on it on the original recommendation, and it was lost. So now this is the original recommendation with the addition of Councillor Oliver's request. So all those in favour? Against? That's a tie, so I'll vote in favour of it. So it's carried. Eight 14 is a strategic planning and regional plan review gap analysis, and there is a recommendation there with a number of dot points. Move, Councillor Maidment.
This is a critical piece of work, and we have the right people to do this job. Very pleased to say a lot of the regional planning we've done to date, there wouldn't be too many gaps in our regional plans. There's some in progress which will be terminated in the very near future. We've got some very good, well-informed strategic plans, so we've got influence in directing growth and planning policy for this area. What we don't want is the government telling us and getting it wrong like they have done plenty of other times in lots of other places, and you can throw Mount Barker in there as an example. We don't want them telling us what we need to do down in this area. And I was very interested to know whether we might get a reply from Nick Champion's reply to the Mayor's letter. The Mayor did a great job in responding to Nick Champion, basically telling him where to get off. And I don't know that we'll get a reply, but hopefully we do, so we can send him back another message. So please support this.
So is there a seconder? Councillor Coomans? Any further
Sorry, I'll just echo Councillor Maidment's comments in relation to the letter from the Minister and your reply. I thought your reply was very good.
I'm having a meeting with the Minister next week to discuss that and lots of other stuff that relate to our council area. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Scott.
I just want to emphasise how important I think this work is, and I look forward to seeing the result of it. I wish Kylie all the best in getting it sorted out, but it is terribly important. I spoke earlier about planning, and it really was partly involved this as well as the village plans, town plans, but it's very, very important, and we are setting the scene for well into the future. So I hope we can get it right. So thank you.
Any further discussion? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. 8.15 is a review of council member policies. There's a list of 5 items. Recommendation. Is there a mover for that? Councillor Thornton. Seconder. Councillor Scott. Any discussion? No, so I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? That carried unanimously. That just falls into line with the local government reform. Perfectly. There we go to 8.16 is the behavioural support policy. There's 2 options there, 1 or 2. So we've got a mover for one of them.
Move option 2.
Option 2. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Gardner. Any discussion relating to it? Put the recommendation to you. All those in favour?
Sorry, I thought I'd missed the boat because you were looking the other way, but I just wonder whether if we have it and we don't need it, we still have it. If we don't have it and we need it, we don't have it. And if you can follow that, that's pretty clear. And I just wonder whether we are better off having it and having it in the hip pocket and not needing it, not using it when, well, not perhaps having to use it, but at least it's there as a resource. I just wonder whether that is a better way of going. Initially, I was thinking as the mover has been thinking, but I just wonder whether it would be an advantage to perhaps have it there.
If I may answer that through the chair, you can decide to bring in this policy at any time, but what if you do go with option 1, which is currently not getting moved, but that would create some work for administration to prepare the policy, and it also means we need to go to public consultation. So it doesn't, by making the decision of option 2 to say to not to do one at this point in time, does not preclude you in the future to re-bring in this policy. It's just if you want to do one, the policy needs to be quite customised and would require public consultation.
Thanks, Tash. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Nicholson.
Perhaps with that in mind from Councillor Scott, could we put a review period on it of 6 months or 12 months that instead of perhaps an instance coming up where, you know, somebody's wondering whether that would have been good, we could set a time frame to review that, and maybe if administration have a little bit more capacity, we could endorse it then.
So we have to ask Councillor Oliver and Councillor Gardner if you're happy to have that review period. Look at it again in 6 months.
I think 6 months is probably too soon. I'm looking at it from the point of view of the workload of administration and management. Perhaps in the next policy cycle review, and I don't know when that's planned, but maybe when it all comes up. I just thought this was an easy one to take out of the water, so we don't have to, you know, make it sail now. Thank you.
So is there any further discussion? So I'll put the recommendation, which is option 2. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. 8.17 is the review of council bylaws. There's 2 dot points and a list of bylaws that are proposed. Is there a mover for those? Councillor Maidment.
Yeah, just that Kennedy Jones have validated these bylaws, and they're ensuring practical efficacy and ensuring the acceptability to the Legislative Review Committee. So how can you go past that? That's all I've got to say.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Livingston. Is there any discussion or questions? Councillor Coomans.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor Parkes. Look, I'm fully in agreement with A, B, C, D and E. I've always had an issue with this CATS bylaw. I think it's going to cost us money. It's got no real benefits as far as I'm concerned. So on principle, if you were to isolate A to E, I'd support that, but I can't support F. So I'd probably have to vote against it if it goes as a group.
So it's up to the mover, Councillor Maidment. Are you happy? No, so it stays in. Is there any further discussion? Questions? Councillor Scott.
Yes, I'm now, it was 9:15 in relation to camping, and I didn't put another heading above it to work out exactly where it is. Oh, here we are, camping tents here, 9:15. It's probably just a very minor thing, but I take it that if a person stops, it says if they are stopping in 9:15.4, use or occupy suffer any caravan, motorhome or other vehicle on any local government land, road or foreshore, for or in connection with camping activities, I guess including washing, cooking and sleeping. I guess the fact it's in connection with camping activities, I just want to make sure that a person that stopped on the side of the road to sleep when they've been driving is not actually contravening a regulation. And I know it's qualified a bit by saying in connection with camping activities, which means the whole 9 yards, I suppose. But I just wanted to be sure that the person that stops when they're fatigued and perhaps are not feeling concerned that they may be breaching a regulation and therefore perhaps don't stop because, oh goodness, I might get caught. And I just wanted to make sure there wasn't a little spot in the regulator. But I suppose if it's in connection with camping, if you pull up on the side of the road, it's not actually in connection with camping. But I posed that. That was the only concern that I had.
Yeah, through the chair. Obviously, this is something that has previously been in our bylaw, so it's not really proposing to change the way we do that. I would have to get some advice on the definition of camping, but I understand it wouldn't be the intent to penalise someone for that.
Sorry, thank you.
So is any further discussion? So I'll put the recommendation of Councillor Oliver. Put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? Against? Councillor Thornton, you're against? Yep. It's carried. So we go to 8.18, which is the confidential order review. So it's various items. So there are several of them that are to be just retained, and it's retaining them in confidence. So move Councillor Livingstone. Seconded Councillor Gardner. Is there any discussion? It's purely just retaining them in confidence, that's all. Just recommendation. We're doing the lot. So we're just doing the recommendation 1 and then we'll do recommendation 2 separately. So Councillor Livingstone's moved it, Councillor Gardner's seconded it. Is there any discussion on recommendation 1? If not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. Now we can go to recommendation 2, which relates to Coorong Cafe at Sugars Beach. Yeah.
Can I please declare an interest? Sorry, that one missed me when I was reading it. I'll declare an interest and I'll happily leave. Because I have a direct interest in the business. Thank you.
Oliver's gone, so is the remover, Councillor Gardner. Seconder, Councillor Maidment. Any discussion? If not, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. So we'll get Councillor Oliver back, then we'll do recommendation 3. We're just talking about recommendation 3. Yep, so it's just allowing the CEO to review it, but not to extend the order. Move Councillor Livingstone. Seconded Councillor Gardner. Any discussion? So I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. 8.19 is the minutes of the Section 141 Committee, the Chief Executive Officer's Performance Management Panel of the 11th of April 2023, and there's a recommendation with 3 dot points there. So it's been just been slightly modified as per the yellow highlighted section on your screen. Okay. So is there a mover for that? It's moved Councillor Oliver. Seconded Councillor Livingston. Any discussion? So I put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. 8.20 is the Chief Executive Officer's report, and there is a recommendation that the report be received and commence promoting the Budget Roadshow, which is part 2 of the recommendation. Moved Councillor Gardner. The seconder, Councillor Oliver. Any discussion? Councillor Maidment.
I've got about 20 questions, so sorry to throw them at you. In the resolutions register, you've got the Red Wine Trail Council report to be tabled 20th of the 3rd, 23. I don't think that's come yet. What's happening with the lease and expansion proposal for Clayton Bay Boat Club and the Caravan Park as well? It says we're awaiting new information, so I wouldn't mind knowing what that would be.
Give him a chance to answer them.
You want to do one by one? Yep, okay.
Well, you've got them written down in front of you.
I've got them written down in front of me.
Nigel
Yep.
doesn't have them written
No, that's
down.
right.
Through the chair, I'd take your note on the wine trail and we'll update that for the next council meeting. On the boat club and the caravan park, we've been consulting on the community land management plan, which needs to progress before we can bring those 2 items back to council. So when that community land management plan comes back, we'll then be able to progress that. So we'll do more of an explanation for that resolution register to put more of a timeline on it.
All right, that's fair enough. The proposed upgrade to Legon Creek Cemetery is to be completed under the existing 22-23 budget, and I've been out there recently and nothing's happened, so I was just wondering when that was due to start, or is it going to be pushed out to the following year?
Through the chair, we've gone out to tender on that. I don't think we received a response that allow us to proceed at the moment, so I'll need to bring something back so that we can progress that.
That's fine, yep. Now, back in February at the 3rd quarterly review, it was recommended that Torella Street stormwater upgrade be adjusted from 480 to 905K, which is an increase of 424K. So do we have that, now that it's been adjusted back to 480, do we have that 424K to play around with before the 30th of June? Because there was a budget adjustment of 238K and things were pushed out and things were added on. So where does that sit, please?
Through the chair, there was a budget last year for 520,000, which was for design and construction of that stormwater process. 37,000 was spent last year, which enabled us to carry $480,000 over into this year. Then what happened at a recent council meeting, we did adjust it to get that extra 400, and so budget put into place to take it up to in the 900s. That would enable us to complete that process. We haven't been able to proceed on that project presently due to waiting on third-party infrastructure providers, including Telstra and Power Network, well, SA Power Networks. What we're trying to do is adjust that design so that we can move forward without adjusting those infrastructure. That as soon as we know a timetable, we'll then be in a position to know what we can spend in this current financial year and then what needs to be carried forward to next financial year. And as soon as we know the timetable, we'll ensure that we go out and let the community know exactly what's occurring and exactly when they can expect movements. But we don't expect to be returning to council to ask for any more funding for that in the near future.
So getting on to lot 10, the 100,000 for infrastructure investigations and a business case, is that to be progressed straight away? Because there's obviously a need to get back to the players in that space to find out what their input to that business case would be. So is there any opportunity to have some savings in that area?
Through the chair, at present we've gone out to a few companies to try and move that business case ahead. We are finding it difficult to find a company that will do that business case in the immediate future. We will approach some more companies. The 100,000 we still believe will need to be expended, but again, there may be some of that carried forward. That's two components, one being the business case, and the other one is the infrastructure scoping.
Last question, sorry. There's quite a few deferred projects from the CEO's project list update, and they've been, for whatever reason, can't find a contractor to do the work, or some challenges with, and I appreciate there's challenges with all it, and I must say we have completed a lot of works this year, probably over and above any other year, so that's a positive. But when you defer a project and say it's 42K for the Port Elliot asbestos remediation with the change rooms, or 277,000 for Randall Road widening, those sorts of figures, where do they go? Do they go into on hold for the following year, or some of these might be too challenging that they don't even get done?
Through the chair, the carrying forward of these projects to the next financial year will be a decision for council. But if we've started a project, you can't just suddenly stop. So we will still be progressing on it. And you rightly pointed out that this council, this financial year, has undertaken more capital projects than they've ever taken before in the history of this council. It was a very ambitious catch-up of not only a 12-month budget cycle this year, but also catching up on, the last 2 or 3 years of projects to do. So this year we've spent, and are estimating to spend, close to $30 million. Last year you spent $14 million. So what we've achieved this year is practically double what last year is. There will be some projects that we're not going to complete this year, as we haven't been able to catch up all those multiple previous years. And what we'll do is bring that to council for a decision and show exactly what we did achieve and what needs to be rolled forward to next year.
Any further questions or discussion? Councillor Coomans.
I'm looking at attachment 1, the resolutions register. I'd like to ask a question on that if I could. The very first item is a code of conduct, which is on page 426. The part 1 of that this was a complaint from a developer. The very first part was determined there's no case to answer by Kelly Jones, and the second part went to the Ombudsman, who in his initial report said that if I'd made an apology he wouldn't proceed to a full report, which I did, and in that case he closed that case completely. But why is it still on here if it's all resolved? Part 1 and part 2 both closed.
Through the chair, it won't appear on the report next. It's an error. It shouldn't be there. I will take it off. It won't appear next month.
Yeah, it causes some embarrassment because people see this and think there's some issues when in fact it's all been closed off last year.
Any further questions or discussion? So I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. Item 9 is council member reports. 9.1 is the presiding member's report. There's a recommendation that report for March be received. Moved Councillor Oliver. Seconder. Councillor Livingston. Any questions or discussion relating to that? Okay, so I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour? Against? That's carried unanimously. We now come to item 10, which is confidential items. So thanks very much. Hang on. Oh, it's not on the agenda. Oh yes, sorry. So we've got no other updates from we've got no written reports for elected members, the council members. Are there any verbal updates anybody would like to give? Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you. So much an update, but I am seeking leave from council for a period of 3 months to take an extended trip with my young family in our caravan. Time spent with our children, Lily, whose 7, Harriet 6 and Astrid 3 is very important to my husband and I, ever more so following the loss and challenges we experienced in Big Way last year. I take the responsibility of being an elected member very seriously, and so this request is not submitted lightly. We're seeking leave from the 23rd of May to ensure that I can attend not only our ordinary council meeting on the 15th, but at the special annual business plan and budget meeting on the 22nd. We're aiming to do a half lap of Australia, heading west, and we'll return by the 31st of August. I'm prepared to fly back if need be for the July council meeting to vote on the budget, and I'll follow closely the agendas, minutes, briefings and workshops and community feedback regarding this. I hope you'll support my request and grant this special time for my family before our youngest starts school next year. Thank you.
So do we have a seconder, Councillor Livingston? Is any discussion? So I'll put the recommendation or the motion to you. All those in favour? Against? It's carried unanimously. Now, are there any reports from elected members? Councillor Coomans?
Yeah, just a quick one, Mayor Parks. I attended the local government ordinary general meeting last Friday, and I'll put some notes together and perhaps do that as a report for the next council meeting.
Councillor Scott.
Very quickly, I just want to highlight a few great things that are occurring in the Alexandrina district that I've witnessed just recently. The great initiative of Jen Watts to organise and get funding and stuff for the carving of a whale out of a red gum log at Middleton. Great initiative, just made it all happen, and it's still happening, and it's nearly there if it's not complete already. That's one thing. Over Easter, I made 2 or 3 trips down to Malang and Clayton, and I'm just amazed at what these small towns, the people, volunteers in these small towns are doing. I went to the market that was adjacent to the railway. It was a fundraiser for the railway, and that was a buzz, made even more so by about 100 combi vans coming through from all over Australia. And then the next day I went down to an open garden down there, which was quite amazing, and called into the Butter Factory, which was open on a Sunday, selling books, raising money. And I was shown, so Norm showed me through what they've done at the Butter Factory, and I have a close interest in the Butter Factory because I was here and voted for its purchase in the first place. So I have an ongoing interest because I had confidence in Malang that they would do something with it, and my goodness, are they doing something with it. And I just think it's just amazing how these small groups can convert the little bit of money they get into something really fantastic. And the paving that's going on down there, that they're carting the stone from the quarry and doing the paving themselves, and at minimal cost. And I just think it's worthy of comment, and I congratulate them, look forward to the end result of all the projects, because the railway's trying to extend their railway. Obviously the Butter Factory, when it's open, will be fantastic, and same with the whale. But it's amazing what some of our people are doing in the district. Thank you.
Councillor Maidment.
Just a plug for the Heritage Awards this year. They will be held at Malang on the 18th of May, so this is getting in early. Put it in your diary because you can get a guided tour of the Butter Factory prior to the awards being held at the Institute that night, and so it'll be showcased down at Malang with the award ceremonies and the handing out of the various certificates to quite a few people who should be in attendance. So you could easily get down there and have a look at it then.
Any further? So I'll put the recommended book that they all be received. All those in favour? Against? Oh, we don't probably need a seconder. We just receive it. Yeah. Is that all right? Do you want to move a seconder? Do you want to move it? Who spoke? I lost a bit of paper now. So move Councillor Nicholson, seconded Councillor Livingston. And carried unanimously. Thank you. Now we can go into the confidential items.
South Coast Television, your community, your voice.